I've spent hours tracking and hunting them down, and while they've proven to be very elusive, I have harnessed my superior knowledge of the bookish wilderness that I've garnered through reading authors such as Hemingway and McCarthy. Stop! Don't eat that! That's literally animal scat! I was able to dig deep and pull my resources and track down some forthcoming books. But it wasn't everything. I've tried everything I could think of. No, seriously, don't do that. That's animal scat. Seriously, anybody working in publishing, is there a reason why it is so hard to find out what books are going to be released next year? Is there a reason I ate animal scat? Wait, don't answer that last question. I've compiled 23 books that are coming in 2023. These are 23 books which I'm looking forward to. They are mostly literary fiction with a few non-fiction titles thrown in, because that's what I like to read. And they're heavily biased towards books released in the first half of the year. Also, there's an intentional error in this video. See if you can figure out what it is. And no, it's nothing to do with animal scat. Coming on the 3rd of January is the debut novel from Tom Crew called The New Life. I know if I say a queer historical fiction set in Victorian England, a few of you are literally going to pause this video and pre-order the book. Two men in 1894 who have never met write a book in the defense of homosexuality. Both men are married. One man has a male lover, while the other one's wife has a significant female friend. As this book nears publication, Oscar Wilde is put on trial, and the men wonder if it really is the right time to publish their book. Coming on the 7th of February is the second novel from Ayobami Adebayo, A Spell of Good Things. Eneola is beaten by his school teachers after his father loses his job and cannot pay the school fees. He also cannot pay for his tailoring apprenticeship, and Eneola becomes the victim of bullying. Wariola is the daughter of the tailor's most valuable customer. She is an exhausted doctor who is engaged to a man with a darker side. Somehow the fate of these two characters becomes tangled in with each other and the politics of the city, exploring two very different families, one with money and one without money. Also coming on the 7th of February is Hungry Ghosts by Kevin Jared Hosen, a novel about Trinidad in the 1940s as the US occupation comes to an end. Barrack is a community set up so that the inhabitants live in poverty. Dalton and Marley own a nearby farm and live in a large house, but nobody knows why Dalton has so much money. And then he goes missing, and Marley starts to receive death threats. Hans' family lives in poverty in Barrack, and he is lured by the promise of money to work as a watchman at the farm. This is a novel that explores racism, violence, class, tradition, jealousy, and love. On February 28th, The Illuminated by Amanita Goose comes out. Indian viewers will have already had a chance to read this, but international readers will get their first chance in February. Sashi is feeling lost after the passing of her husband. Her daughter Tara is a Sanskrit scholar and has just started a relationship with a much older man. Religious fundamentalism is on the rise in India, and it seems determined to put these two women back in their place. So this mother and daughter reflect and look on each other in a new light. A lot of Indian reviewers who have had the chance to read this have said two things in their review. One, that the prose is beautiful, and two, that the writing is emotionally evocative. And that is praise I like to hear about a book before I begin reading it. Also on the 29th of February is Deep Down by Imogen West Knight. Billy and Tom have just found out that their father has died. Billy gets on a plane and heads to Paris to reconnect with her brother, hoping to heal from past traumas. Switching between the present timeline and flashback, this book ends up in the Paris catacombs, one of a growing popular breed of novels that blends big issues such as grief and trauma with humour. You'll laugh, you'll cry, it'll be great, but actually you probably will do both. I don't know, I haven't read it yet, but that's what it sounds like. On March 1st, I Went to See My Father by Kyan Suk Shin is released. Hon's daughter has tragically died. 2 years later, she moves in with her father in the countryside to help care for him. Blinded by her own grief, Hon starts to realize her father has been keeping things from her, and Hon really must learn who her father is again. From his involvement in war, to his connection with a cult, to his love of her siblings, and the reason why they grew up in such financial hardship. This just sounds like a beautiful story about one woman and her aging father rediscovering each other and their relationship. Of all the books on this list, this one just sounds exceptionally good. On March 2nd is Nothing Special by Nicole Flattery. 17-year-old May has dropped out of high school and lives with her alcoholic mother and her part-time boyfriend Mikey when she gets a job as a typist for Andy Warhol, which makes me wonder about the cover of this book. I mean, May makes a new friend, Shelley, and the two start to attend parties together and explore their womanhood and sexuality. May starts to become obsessed with the tapes that Warhol asks her to type out, and we explore the line between art and voyeurism. Honestly, this sounds like it's either going to be really, really good or really, really bad. But the publisher is doubling down on that message by saying that it's for fans of Ortesha Mosfet. Prepare for lots of 1 and lots of 5-star ratings of this book. Coming on the 7th of March is Burnham Wood. Eleanor Catton was just 27 when her last novel won the Booker Prize. 10 years later, and she's released her 3rd novel. 5 years ago, Mira Bunting founded a guerrilla gardening group named Burnham Wood. And I'm sold. I don't need to know any more. More books need to be dedicated to guerrilla gardening, please. My favourite form of protest, putting plants into the ground against the wishes of the government. It's just joyful. For those of you who aren't eco-anti-capitalists, here's the plot. For years, this group has struggled to break even, but Mira thinks she finally has the answer after a landslide causes a large farming land to be abandoned. Robert Lemian is a billionaire who is also interested in the abandoned farming land, and he takes an interest in Mira and suggests that they farm his land. But can Mira trust billionaire Robert? You can never trust a billionaire, Mira. You can never trust a billionaire. Who Gets to Be Believed by Dinah Nariri is released on the 7th of March, and this is the first non-fiction on this list. This book asks the question, why are honest asylum seekers dismissed as liars? Starting with asylum seekers, Nairi also explores having to convince a doctor that she would prefer a C-section. She explores human psychology and examines why we listen to the wishes of some people and ignore others. This is a fascinating question. Ada's Realm by Sharon Otto is released on March 28. In a small West African village, in a land that one day will become Ghana, Ada gives birth, and again, the baby does not live. Ada Lovelace, a maths genius, is forced into prostitution inside a Nazi concentration camp. Ada is a young, pregnant Ghanese woman with a British passport arriving in Berlin. Ada is many women. She is a victim. She is resilient. She is fighting for her independence. To be honest, I'm not sure whether this is speculative or just a metaphor, but it's been marketed as feminist, empathetic, and humorous, and I like all those things. Chain Gang AllStars, Nada Kwame Ajayi Brenyan is released on April the 4th. And I apologise, I just don't know how to pronounce that name, but this book sounds like fun and quite serious on some issues too. The Chain Gang AllStars are the cornerstone of CAPE, Criminal Action Penal Entertainment, a highly popular, highly controversial, profit-raising program in America's private prison system. Loretta Thorwar and Hamara Hurricane Stacker, two lovers, are the stars of the show, as prisoners linked in chain gangs must fight to the death for their freedom. If it all goes well, Thorwar will be free in a matter of minutes, but she starts to wonder how can she preserve the humanity of her teammates? On April 5th, Crushing by Genevieve Novak drops. Novak's last novel, No Hard Feelings, was piss-takingly funny, and the blurb of this book comes with this quote: "Getting over someone is not that difficult. All you have to do is focus on every negative thing about them for the rest of your life until you forget to stop actively hoping for their slow and painful death. Then get a haircut." Serial monogamist Marnie is having a bit of an identity crisis after a decade of twisting herself into various versions of the ideal girlfriend. She's also crushing on her friend Isaac pretty hard, but it's cool, he has a girlfriend, and she's figuring out who she is. Novak appears to again be smashing literary fiction into romantic comedy, but honestly, if she makes me laugh as frequently as her last novel did, I don't really care what she writes. She's just a funny lady. Shy by Max Porter is released on April the 6th. Max Porter is an author who I personally need to be very cautious of. He's amazingly talented, but with a bombastic style that I am not always in the mood to read. And this is about a teenage boy with voices in his head who is trying to escape Last Chance, a home for disturbed young men, and is haunted by the voices of his parents, teachers, and all the people he has hurt and who were just trying to love him. This sounds like the ideal book for Porter's unique writing style. Close to home, Michael Magee. This is released on the 6th of April. Sean's brother Anto is a hard man, but Sean is educated and not hanging around. But when the jobs in Belfast vanish and Sean's degree is worthless, he loses it and assaults a stranger at a party, and Sean returns to Antho, a story about the forces that keep working class men in harm's way. Coming on April 18th is Any Other City by Hazel Jane Plant. It's 1993 and Tracy is the lead singer of an indie rock group. She moves to a new city and falls in love with a variety of trans women. It's now 2019, 26 years later, and Tracy is now a semi-famous musician. But Tracy is trying to heal from trauma through song lyrics, through queer friendship, and through sexual pleasure. Tracy explores how her past choices have led to her current situation and how her body feels like a time machine. A novel about friendship, love, queer sex, and music. I mean, it sounds good, right? Pathogenis by Jonathan Kennedy is released on April 18th with a subtitle, A History of the World in 8 Plagues. Jonathan Kennedy is examining the rise of Homo sapiens, the bacteria and viruses that wiped out the Neanderthals, the rise of Islam and Christianity, the change from feudalism to capitalism, European colonialization, the Roman Empire, and the rise of the USA are all things covered in Kennedy's ambitious new non-fiction title. Claire Fuller really raised the bar with her last novel, Unsettled Ground, and on April 20th, The Memory of Animal is released, and it's an unsettling science fiction novel. Neffy is offered a spot at a vaccine trial, an offer that will help her pay off her debts. During the trial, communication ceases and the London streets around her fall silent. Neffy and 4 other volunteers must figure out what's happened amid fear that other members in the unit are hiding something. And I can't help to wonder if this is a lockdown-inspired novel. But if it is a lockdown-inspired novel, it's clearly gone through a big metamorphosis, but it's just got that feeling of isolation to it and distrust of everything around it. Another big name author with a book coming out in the early part of next year is Caleb Azuma Nelson. Small Worlds drops on May the 11th. Open Water had such lyrical prose and was such an emotional novel. It's hard to imagine that anything that Azuma Nelson writes will be anything less than amazing. Stefan has lost his faith, but he hasn't lost his rhythm. He's still attending church to dance. He's hanging out with his friends in a basement, dancing to some drums or to a local DJ. He dances with his friend Adeline, and they make beautiful dances. Stephen's father speaks to him of the shame and sacrifices, and Stephen's world shrinks. Set over 3 summers of Stephen's life, this book goes to London and it goes to Ghana. The focus of this book feels very much like dance in the way that Open Water focused on music. On May 16th is Yellowfaced by R.F. Kuang, the only book on this list that I have been lucky enough to read, and I have a review out of it as well. A white author and her best friend, a successful Asian author, hang out, and then the Asian author chokes on her food and dies. The white author steals the Asian author's manuscript for her latest novel and passes it off as her own. Plagiarism and racism go head to head in R.F. Kuang's first dip into literary fiction. The Three of Us. Ori Agbaji Williams. A long-standing tension between a husband, wife and her best friend comes to a breaking point in this domestic comedy set over 24 hours. What if the two most important people in your life hate each other? On May 23rd, Brandon Taylor's new book, The Late Americans, is released. A portrait of a group of friends and lovers and their relationship set in Iowa. And while this book needs some better marketing, like it frankly does, because I could not tell you what this book is about. It doesn't matter because Brandon Taylor is a selling ticket here. His last novel made the Bookish shortlist. It won him a lot of fans, and by all accounts, it is absolutely beautiful. Nisha Doolan's new novel, The Happy Couple, is released on May 25th. Luke and Celine are meant to marry at the end of the year. Archie is the best man for the wedding, but he's trying to move on from his love for Luke. Bridesmaid Phoebe is Celine's sister, but she seems to think something is sus about Luke's constant disappearances, and Vivian is just happy to sit there and observe the mess. Does happiness for Luke and Celine exist at the end of the aisle? Ordinary Human Feelings, Megan Nolan's, is released on June 15th. So little is known about this book at the moment, there isn't even a blurb. But Nolan's last novel, Acts of Desperation, divided readers. And this is the follow-up novel, and I'm sure she's going to divide those readers yet again. Tokens, The Future of Money by Rachel O'Dwyer is released all the way in the future on October the 17th. We'll know the Booker Prize winner on that date. Maybe, I'm not sure actually. Physical money is becoming a thing of the past, and Rachel O'Dwyer is looking at what the future might hold for humanity's imaginary god. This non-fiction is very much not a book about economics, it is a book about technology, and it just sounds very interesting. That's it. Did you spot the error? The error is that there wasn't 23 books, there was actually 24. Let me know in the comments what book you're most looking forward to in 2023. And if you want to know some of the best novels to be released in 2022, click here. Bye bye.